After so much time passing by, multiple seasons of coming and going, we are finally showcasing the last of the Goobers. Welcome everyone, the one and only Goober Edward. Now, it has been a long time since the last Goober model showcase, so I'll do a brief recap on what these models are and how the hell they managed to come into existence. So these Goober models began with the All Just Go push-along toys when they first came out. Upon their initial release, some modelers in the community were modifying them to make them into gag models, so just tearing off the top and just sticking it onto like a Gannet chassis, for example. Mostly as a little joke. Around this time as well, I also saw a lot of people taking Bachman Thomas models and adding graffiti lettering onto them, and other graffiti artwork as well. And I love to look at these different models, and figured I would try them together. The first two push-along engines I got were Thomas and Gordon. Thomas was hydro-dipped to try to give it the graffiti messed up look, and Gordon was painted to like an abandoned theme park engine, say the Thomas that was at Six Flags that was then repainted. These two models were super fun to make, and were very popular in the videos. And once they revealed that a push-along Henry was happening, I jumped into making more. Eventually, the collection grew into this. Goober Edward was the last one I finished. It was also one of the last to come out of the main 7. I was even teasing this design for him in some of my thumbnails on older videos related to the Goobers. It just took a while to come across this model. Eventually, one day about a year ago now, I came across him in Walmart and I bought him instantly, as you can imagine. And here we are now with Goober Edward. And we are now finally covering him. Let's dive into what happened in the life of Goober Edward. Like all the other Goobers, Goober Edward was never sentient or even powered at first. He was built as a free-rolling dummy unit for Dale Thomas events in the United States. Some nondescript railroad in the Northeast United States built a handful of these based on Thomas characters for these events. Among these was Edward. These events were successful for the railroad, but however, by the early 2000s, the railroad had to shut down operations. A few of these dummy units were sold to a theme park a few states over, while the others were left abandoned. Edward, Henry, Gordon, and James dummy units were sold to the same theme park, and were motorized and modified accordingly for different parts of the park. The Edward dummy units was refurbished for a dark ride. However, this particular dark ride was not very popular, especially since it was in competition with others that featured other dummy units. Eventually, the one featuring the Edward dummy units was shut down by the park and demolished. Thankfully, the Goober Edward units wasn't scrapped on site. Instead, it was moved to become a little monument at a fork in one of the walkways. So when park goers will walk around and see some of the signs, they would see the Goober Edward there. This is where he will gain the left-right arrows on his face. When the park closed in the mid-2010s, the Goober engines at the park were moved to a storage shed near a railroad line, and sat abandoned for some years. Eventually, the real Thomas discovered them while on tour. He was really fascinated by all of these, as he never seen any of the dummy units in person up until now. His crew took note of them, and then continued on. There was not much other documentation past this point on the Goober engines, but it is believed that all of them are still left in the storage shed by the tracks. At least the ones that are at the theme park. All are still slowly degrading away, forgotten by the world. Goober Edward was really fun to make. Like all the other Goobers, he was made using his All Engines Go push-along counterpart. Before we continue, I just want to apologize since I thought I took progress pictures of making this model, but as I was searching my photo gallery for this video, I could not find any pictures whatsoever of me making this. I do apologize for this. I really thought I was taking pictures of them as I was going, but shit happens, I guess. So I'll just show some substitute pictures in their place to convey what I'm doing best I can. Probably won't fit most of the time, but I'll try my best to see what I can do. Alright, back to the show. I first unscrew the body and submerge the metal parts into a paint stripper. There's the warning when handling chemicals like paint stripper. Never consume it or put plastic parts in it. Also, always wear proper eye protection, glove protection. Just don't want to have contact with any part of your body that isn't covered by something, as if it stays on long enough, it can burn your skin. And also, if you are going to use a lot of it, I would recommend only mixing water with it. I don't know what happens if you mix anything else in, but it's better to not find out the hard way. Thankfully, I didn't have any chemical crisis or any paint stripper, but I always gotta be careful, you know? After about 2 days of the metal boiler sitting in a mason jar full of this paint stripper, I gave it a good rinse and used a metal wire brush to remove the remaining paint spots. After a good wash down, I primed the body in a spray-on white by Rust-Oleum. This is actual primer. Shocker by me, I know. And it works pretty good. Once that dried, I sprayed a light blue by Rust-Oleum. I also sprayed the Smokebox Silver, a common trait among the theme park goobers. I then painted other parts of the body accordingly. After most of the paintwork was done, I worked on the running board. I chopped off the bottom and any part that would go through the chassis so that the new one would fit. The chassis in question was from a Bachmann Thomas that I had years ago, that was pretty much immediately cannibalized for parts and then used on a red snapper. And also my ancient model dash. God, that was an old one, I remember that one. That dash model was scrapped shortly after its showing on my channel, and the chassis sat in my parts drawer for some time. I remembered I had it, so I fished it out for this project, and then I just glued the Goober body onto it. Kinda looks like a Thomas One railway engine now. I also painted the remaining wheels in a mixed colors. After this was full reassembly of everything else. After adding some various details around the body, especially the front face details with the big arrow and the diamonds, Goober Edward was finally done. The Goober collection is now finally complete. I am so happy to finally have this mini collection complete. Looking at this group kind of reminds me of a high school reunion like decades later, where everyone meeting up with each other again looks almost unrecognizable in some cases from when they first met. On the same side of that coin, it reminds me how some theme parks that used to have Thomas rides will just repaint the Thomas engine to be on brand with the park itself, which surprisingly is still happening today. A while back it was announced that Thomastown and Kennywood will be closing. However, just very recently it came out that they are fully retheming the area into a new theme park called Kennywood Junction, which will be themed around Steel City history, and is going to open on April 12th. All the Thomas rides are being rethemed to this new theme, and the Thomas engine itself is being repainted to fit the new theme. It is wild to me that this phenomenon is still continuing. Hell, I might even make a model of it depending what the final outcome looks like. Even some of the Six Flags Thomas repaints, who knows? Have to wait and see. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Porterverse Workbench, and I shall see you all same time next week.